The rain was brutal that night. I stood outside the Vale estate with one battered suitcase at my feet, blood drying beneath my shirt, while the iron gates slowly closed in front of me. Behind them, my family was laughing. My Uncle Victor raised his whiskey glass. "You should be grateful we let you stay this long, Ethan." My Aunt Margaret smiled beside him. No position, no money, no shares, no home. A few relatives laughed. 3 days ago, I had been acting director of Vale Holdings. I handled the contracts, investments, emergency reserves, and every crisis this family created. Now they were acting like I had never mattered. Then Caleb stepped forward. My younger cousin. He was wearing my coat, my actual coat. "You always thought you were better than us," he said. "Look at you now." Then Sophia appeared beside him. My fiancée, or former fiancée. She slipped her arm through Caleb's without hesitation. "That hurt more than the bruises, Ethan," she said. "Just leave with some dignity." Dignity. 3 days earlier, Victor had presented forged documents accusing me of stealing company money, fake transfers, fake signatures, 2 bribed employees, and Sophia delivered the final betrayal. She told the board I planned to flee the country. They suspended me, froze my accounts, seized my apartment and cars. Then Caleb's bodyguards dragged me into the underground garage and beat me until breathing hurt. No broken bones, nothing too visible, just enough to send a message. Disappear. Victor lifted his glass again. Go sleep under a bridge. The laughter grew louder. I looked at every face behind those gates. Margaret, Victor, Caleb, Beatrice, whose gambling debts I had paid. Marcus, whose restaurants I had saved twice. Eleanor, who demanded expensive gifts every year. And Sophia. Not one of them looked guilty. They believed they had won. Victor frowned. "What are you smiling about?" I hadn't realized I was. "Nothing." I picked up my suitcase. Then I walked away. The gates slammed shut behind me. Grandfather had warned me years ago. Blood is loyal when there's nothing to steal. I had laughed. He hadn't. Once real money appears, Ethan, blood attracts wolves. I thought he was wrong. That mistake cost me almost everything. My phone was disconnected. My cards were frozen. I had only a few wet bills in my wallet. After walking nearly an hour, I found an abandoned bus shelter and sat down. My ribs burned. Inside my suitcase were 2 shirts, 1 pair of pants, and an old leather notebook. That was all they left me. Then a voice sounded inside my head. Bloodline identity verified. I froze. Final inheritance condition fulfilled. A pale blue light appeared in front of me. Words formed in the air. Blackstone estate authority transferred. Emergency capital released. Primary heir confirmed. I stared at the message. Then I saw my grandfather's name, Arthur Vale. The inheritance would only activate after I lost my position, lost access to the family fortune, and was betrayed by the people closest to me. Grandfather had planned for this. More information appeared. Blackstone Villa, private farmland, water reserves, medical facilities, security systems, warehouses, investment companies, transportation firms, technology holdings. Then I saw the total value. My breathing stopped. Blackstone was worth several times more than the entire public Vale fortune. The relatives who had thrown me into the rain thought they had stolen an empire. They had stolen the shell. The foundation belonged to me. Then I saw something even better. Vale Holdings debt exposure. Most of the private loans I had used to keep the company alive had come from firms controlled by my grandfather. Those firms now belonged to Blackstone, which meant they belonged to me. Victor had taken the chairman's seat. Caleb had taken my office. Margaret had taken the estate. But the debt beneath all of them was mine. For the first time that night, I laughed. Then headlights appeared through the rain. A black sedan stopped in front of me. An elderly man stepped out with an umbrella. Silas Reed, my grandfather's former private secretary. He walked toward me and bowed. "Welcome back, Master Ethan." I stared at him. Grandfather planned all this. Silas looked at the bruises beneath my collar. "Your grandfather arranged the opportunity." His eyes turned cold. "Your relatives arranged their own destruction." Inside the car waited a clean suit, secured phone, and a black folder. I opened it. Debt agreements, property deeds, corporate records, Vale Holdings. Silas spoke quietly. They believe the company is healthy. It isn't. No. How long without me? Weeks. I looked back toward the city. My family was probably still celebrating. Silas asked, "Should we call the debt tonight?" I closed the folder. No. He looked surprised. Because destroying them now would be too easy. I wanted Victor confident, Caleb arrogant, Margaret spending, Sophia celebrating. I wanted them borrowing money, signing guarantees, and building everything on debt they did not understand. Then I looked at Silas. Increase their credit. His eyes narrowed. Make the terms attractive. Very. A slow smile appeared on his face. Give them enough rope. The car entered a private mountain road. Ahead of us, massive gates opened. Blackstone Villa stood beyond them. My real home, my real empire. I looked at Silas. Exactly. And when they tie the knot, I watched the gates open wider. Pull. The rain was brutal that night. I stood outside the Vale estate with one battered suitcase at my feet, blood drying beneath my shirt, while the iron gates slowly closed in front of me. Behind them, my family was laughing. My Uncle Victor raised his whiskey glass. You should be grateful we let you stay this long. Ethan. My Aunt Margaret smiled beside him. No position, no money, no shares, no home. A few relatives laughed. 3 days ago, I had been acting director of Vale Holdings. I handled the contracts, investments, emergency reserves, and every crisis this family created. Now they were acting like I had never mattered. Then Caleb stepped forward. My younger cousin. He was wearing my coat, my actual coat. You always thought you were better than us, he said. Look at you now. Then Sophia appeared beside him. My fiancée, or former fiancée. She slipped her arm through Caleb's without hesitation. That hurt more than the bruises. Ethan, she said, just leave with some dignity. Dignity. 3 days earlier, Victor had presented forged documents accusing me of stealing company money, fake transfers, fake signatures, 2 bribed employees, and Sophia delivered the final betrayal. She told the board I planned to flee the country. They suspended me, froze my accounts, seized my apartment and cars. Then Caleb's bodyguards dragged me into the underground garage and beat me until breathing hurt. No broken bones, nothing too visible, just enough to send a message. Disappear. Victor lifted his glass again. Go sleep under a bridge. The laughter grew louder. I looked at every face behind those gates. Margaret, Victor, Caleb, Beatrice, whose gambling debts I had paid. Marcus, whose restaurants I had saved twice. Eleanor, who demanded expensive gifts every year. And Sophia. Not one of them looked guilty. They believed they had won. Victor frowned. What are you smiling about? I hadn't realized I was. Nothing. I picked up my suitcase. Then I walked away. The gates slammed shut behind me. Grandfather had warned me years ago. Blood is loyal when there's nothing to steal. I had laughed. He hadn't. Once real money appears. Ethan, blood attracts wolves. I thought he was wrong. That mistake cost me almost everything. My phone was disconnected. My cards were frozen. I had only a few wet bills in my wallet. After walking nearly an hour, I found an abandoned bus shelter and sat down. My ribs burned. Inside my suitcase were 2 shirts, 1 pair of pants, and an old leather notebook. That was all they left me. Then a voice sounded inside my head. Bloodline identity verified. I froze. Final inheritance condition fulfilled. A pale blue light appeared in front of me. Words formed in the air. Blackstone estate authority transferred. Emergency capital released. Primary heir confirmed. I stared at the message. Then I saw my grandfather's name, Arthur Vale. The inheritance would only activate after I lost my position, lost access to the family fortune, and was betrayed by the people closest to me. Grandfather had planned for this. More information appeared. Blackstone Villa, private farmland, water reserves, medical facilities, security systems, warehouses, investment companies, transportation firms, technology holdings. Then I saw the total value. My breathing stopped. Blackstone was worth several times more than the entire public Vale fortune. The relatives who had thrown me into the rain thought they had stolen an empire. They had stolen the shell. The foundation belonged to me. Then I saw something even better. Vale Holdings debt exposure. Most of the private loans I had used to keep the company alive had come from firms controlled by my grandfather. Those firms now belonged to Blackstone, which meant they belonged to me. Victor had taken the chairman's seat. Caleb had taken my office. Margaret had taken the estate. But the debt beneath all of them was mine. For the first time that night, I laughed. Then headlights appeared through the rain. A black sedan stopped in front of me. An elderly man stepped out with an umbrella. Silas Reed, my grandfather's former private secretary. He walked toward me and bowed. "Welcome back, Master Ethan." I stared at him. Grandfather planned all this. Silas looked at the bruises beneath my collar. "Your grandfather arranged the opportunity." His eyes turned cold. "Your relatives arranged their own destruction." Inside the car waited a clean suit, secured phone, and a black folder. I opened it. Debt agreements, property deeds, corporate records, Vale Holdings. Silas spoke quietly. "They believe the company is healthy. It isn't. No. How long without me?" "Weeks." I looked back toward the city. My family was probably still celebrating. Silas asked, "Should we call the debt tonight?" I closed the folder. "No." He looked surprised. Because destroying them now would be too easy. I wanted Victor confident, Caleb arrogant, Margaret spending, Sophia celebrating. I wanted them borrowing money, signing guarantees, and building everything on debt they did not understand. Then I looked at Silas. Increase their credit. His eyes narrowed. Make the terms attractive. Very. A slow smile appeared on his face. Give them enough rope. The car entered a private mountain road. Ahead of us, massive gates opened. Blackstone Villa stood beyond them. My real home. My real empire. I looked at Silas. Exactly. And when they tie the knot, I watched the gates open wider. Pull. By noon the next day, Victor Vale had already started calling himself chairman. Not acting chairman. Not interim chairman. Chairman. He moved into my grandfather's bedroom, took over the main office, and ordered the staff to address him by title. Margaret planned a celebration. Caleb ordered a new sports car. Sophia hired a branding consultant. They had not even survived 24 hours without me, and they were already spending money they did not have. From Blackstone, I watched it happen. Silas placed a tablet in front of me. Vale Holdings accepted the first credit facility. How much did they draw? 32 million. I looked up. That fast. They asked for more. Of course they did. The money hit their accounts that morning. By lunch, Victor had approved 3 new development projects. None of them had proper feasibility studies. One was a luxury hotel on land with unresolved zoning issues. Another was a shopping complex in an area where retail traffic had been declining for years. The third belonged to Marcus, a restaurant expansion I had rejected twice. Caleb had approved it in 10 minutes. Silas swiped to the next page. They've also purchased vehicles. How many? 6. For the company. No. I smiled. Good. Silas almost laughed. Margaret was worse. She hired designers to renovate the estate. My old bedroom was being torn apart. The library beside it would become a private salon. The storage rooms were being converted into a wine lounge. She had complained for years that I controlled household spending too tightly. Now there was no one left to tell her no. Sophia had also started spending. Caleb promised to turn her into a luxury brand. She rented an entire office floor, hired photographers, stylists, consultants, influencers. There was only one problem. She had no product, no supply chain, no real customers, just money, borrowed money. Silas looked at me. Should we slow the credit? No. He waited. Let them feel rich. That was the key. Desperate people became careful. Comfortable people became stupid. And my family was becoming very comfortable. 3 days later, Victor hosted what he called a leadership banquet. Businessmen came. Lenders came. Investors came. Most of them knew exactly what Vale Holdings was becoming. A wounded company wearing expensive clothes. But none of them said it. Why would they? Fools with access to credit were profitable. A private lender named Meridian Capital offered Victor another facility. Fast approval, flexible collateral, minimal oversight. Victor loved it. Caleb hesitated, just for a second. Should we review the contract first? Victor frowned. With who? Caleb said nothing. The answer was obvious. Me. I had reviewed every important contract for years. I had found the buried clauses, the dangerous guarantees, the hidden penalties, but admitting that now would make Caleb look weak. So he smiled. Never mind. Victor signed. Margaret signed. Caleb signed. Marcus signed. Beatrice signed because she wanted her gambling debts cleared. Eleanor signed because she wanted a seaside mansion. Even Sophia attached herself through a new media subsidiary. Personal guarantees, collateral clauses, cross-default provisions. Every signature tied them tighter to Blackstone-controlled lenders. When the signed copies arrived, Silas placed them in front of me. All controlling relatives are committed. I read every name. Victor, Margaret, Caleb, Marcus, Beatrice, Eleanor, Sophia. Then I closed the file. They moved faster than I expected. Greed usually does. I looked toward the lake. Release another portion. Silas nodded. How much? Enough to reward them. Not enough to save them. Enough to make them reckless. The second transfer went out that afternoon. The party at the Vale estate grew louder, and the spending accelerated. Victor arranged financing for a private aircraft. Caleb ordered more cars. Margaret imported furniture. Marcus opened 3 restaurants in locations I had already rejected. Sophia announced a launch party before her brand had anything to sell. Every luxury purchase made them feel powerful. Every purchase also created another obligation, another contract, another weakness. Meanwhile, something else started happening. The competent people began leaving Vale Holdings. First, 2 senior finance managers resigned, then a legal advisor, then a logistics director. Then the chief accountant started interviewing with competitors. These people had worked beside me. They knew the truth. Vale Holdings was not strong. It had only looked strong because I was constantly repairing it. Victor responded exactly as I expected. He replaced professionals with relatives. Margaret's nephew became finance director. He had never worked in finance. Marcus's son became head of logistics. Beatrice's boyfriend became a legal advisor. They had one qualification: loyalty to Victor. I looked at Silas. Contact the people who resigned. All of them, the competent ones. Blackstone began making offers. Better salaries, more authority, real resources. Within days, experienced accountants, engineers, operations managers, and logistics specialists started arriving at the mountain. Then Evelyn Hart came. She had been Vale Holdings' chief operating officer, one of the few people on the board who had warned them not to remove me. Victor fired her after she refused to approve the sale of a profitable warehouse. She sat across from me in Blackstone's conference room. For a long moment, she stared at the company name on the contract, Blackstone Consortium. Then she looked at me. This belongs to you. It does now. She turned another page. Her new position was larger than the one Victor had taken from her. More authority, more staff, more capital. But Evelyn did not sign immediately. What do you want me to do? Build. What? I leaned back. Everything they were too blind to understand. She studied me. And Vale Holdings. I looked at the report beside me. Let it show everyone what it really is. Evelyn understood. Without me holding it together, there was not much left to reveal. She signed. Then Blackstone started growing. We restored farmland, expanded greenhouses, built food reserves, increased water storage, purchased delivery fleets, upgraded medical facilities, expanded backup power, built workshops capable of repairing our own vehicles and equipment. Every dollar had a purpose. No vanity, no useless displays. While Margaret bought chandeliers, I bought irrigation systems. While Caleb bought sports cars, I bought trucks. While Sophia paid celebrities to attend parties, I funded laboratories and food processing. Their wealth became photographs. Mine became infrastructure. Then one morning, Evelyn entered my office carrying a weather report. Her expression was serious. There's a major storm system forming offshore. I looked at the forecast. How bad? If the models hold. Flooding. Supply disruption. Almost certainly. I stood. Food. Regional warehouses could be cut off. Fuel. Same problem. I looked through the window at Blackstone's fields. How long can we operate without outside supply? Evelyn answered immediately. Years. And the nearby villages. With rationing and increased production. We can support them too. Then prepare. She nodded. At that moment, Silas entered with another file. Vale Holdings requested a second credit increase. I looked at him. They already spent the first. Almost. What are they offering as collateral? Silas placed a photograph on the desk. The Vale estate, the same gates that had closed in my face. I stared at the image. They're mortgaging the house. Yes. I said nothing for several seconds. Then I handed the file back. Except, that evening, Victor signed away the estate. He celebrated afterward. He believed he had unlocked more money. He had no idea he had just given me the legal right to take the roof over his head. The next morning, thunder rolled across the mountains, and the rain began. The storm hit before sunrise. By 8 in the morning, roads were already flooding. By 10, delivery trucks had stopped moving. By noon, half the region was dealing with power failures. At Blackstone, nothing changed. The lights stayed on. Water kept flowing. The kitchens kept working. The greenhouses remained sealed and warm. Our backup systems switched over exactly as planned. At the Vale estate, everything failed at once. Victor called 3 emergency meetings before breakfast. Caleb shouted at managers. Margaret screamed at servants because the heating system shut down. Sophia was furious because the storm had ruined her brand launch. None of them understood the real problem. They had spent years believing stability happened naturally. It did not. I had built it, and now I was gone. Evelyn entered the Blackstone command room. The southern highway is closed. Alternative route. Mountain road still open. Move the supply trucks now. She nodded. Another report came in. 2 villages had lost electricity. A local clinic was running out of refrigerated medicine. I looked at the operations map. Send generators to the clinic. And the villages. Food and water first, then fuel. Orders moved immediately. No arguments. No panic. That was the difference. At the Vale estate, panic was becoming the only system they had left. Their main generator failed before noon. The backup generator never started. I had warned Margaret months earlier that it needed servicing. She had used the maintenance budget to remodel a guest lounge. Then the refrigerators shut down. Imported meat began to spoil. Frozen food melted. The estate still had hundreds of bottles of expensive wine, but very little actual food. Victor called the company accountant. Move money into the emergency account. The accountant hesitated. We can't. What do you mean? You can't. The banks suspended several transfers. Then used the new credit facility. They require updated records. Victor slammed his hand on the desk. Send them. We don't have the complete schedules. Silence. Everyone knew who had maintained them. Me. Caleb stepped in. Then rebuild them. That could take weeks. We don't have weeks. For the first time, fear entered his voice. Another manager resigned that afternoon. Then another. Former employees stopped answering their calls. Suppliers demanded payment. 3 construction sites shut down. 1 restaurant lost refrigeration. 2 hotels requested emergency funding. Vale Holdings had spent years balancing on a knife. The family simply had never noticed, because I had always been underneath it, holding everything steady. At Blackstone, Silas approached me with my secured phone. They're calling you. The screen showed dozens of missed calls. Victor, Margaret, Caleb, Sophia. I opened the messages. The first ones were arrogant. Call immediately. We need access to company files. Stop acting childish. Then the tone changed. We need to discuss your return. This situation is getting serious. Then finally, Ethan, please answer. I deleted them. Silas watched me. Nothing. They didn't want me when they thought they were winning. I handed the phone back. They don't get me now because they're losing. Outside, another Blackstone convoy rolled through the gates. Families from the flooded villages were arriving. Children wrapped in blankets, elderly residents, people carrying whatever they had managed to save. No one was forced to beg. No one was mocked. The kitchens served hot food. Medical staff checked injuries. Temporary rooms were opened. One little boy stood near the entrance holding a bowl of soup with both hands. His mother kept thanking the volunteers. I looked away. Silas noticed. You're letting hundreds of strangers inside. They need help. And your family. They made their choice. That night, the rain got worse. At the Vale estate, the last servants began leaving. Victor promised bonuses. They asked for cash. He had none. Caleb tried to drive into the city. His sports car stalled in floodwater before he reached the main road. He returned soaked and furious. Margaret screamed when he tracked mud across the marble floor. Caleb stared at her. We have no food. There's wine. I said food. The room went quiet. Sophia's phone was dead. Her office could not be reached. Her launch had collapsed. Her staff stopped responding. She looked at Caleb. You said the estate had emergency systems. Caleb snapped back. Ethan handled them. The name hung in the room. No one spoke. Then Victor poured himself another glass. He planned this. Marcus looked at him. What? He knew the storm was coming. Margaret immediately agreed. He sabotaged us. Sophia frowned. How? He hasn't been here. Victor ignored her. Blaming me was easier than admitting the truth. They had destroyed their own safety systems, spent their own reserves, fired their own competent people, mortgaged their own home. I had not sabotaged anything. I had simply stopped saving them. Then part of the eastern roof began leaking. Water ran down the wall. Gold wallpaper peeled away. Margaret stared at it in horror. I had requested structural repairs the year before. She had redirected the budget to decoration. Now the walls were literally falling apart around them. At Blackstone, Evelyn entered with another update. The surrounding villages are stable for now. Food. Enough. Medicine. Enough if the roads stay open. And the Vale estate. She paused. No power. No fuel. Minimal food. And they've begun requesting emergency assistance. I looked at her. From us. Yes. On what grounds? They claim family priority. I almost smiled. Family. That word again. Silas stepped closer. They still don't know you own Blackstone. They will. When? I looked out at the storm. When hunger becomes stronger than pride. 2 days later, that moment came. A former Vale servant arrived at Blackstone with his wife and children. He had walked 6 miles through the rain. After receiving food and dry clothes, he asked to speak with me. The family knows there's a shelter in the mountains. I nodded. They're asking who owns it. And what did you tell them? He hesitated. The truth. Far below. Inside the dark Vale estate. The servant's words landed like an explosion. Blackstone Villa belongs to Mr. Ethan. Victor dropped his glass. Margaret went pale. Caleb grabbed the servant by the collar. You're lying. The man pulled free. I saw him at the gates. Sophia took 1 step backward. The Blackstone Consortium. The servant nodded. All his. No one spoke. Then he looked around at the starving family. Mr. Ethan is feeding everyone. He paused at the door. Everyone except you. Then he left. At Blackstone, Evelyn brought me their formal emergency request. Food, fuel, medical supplies, evacuation. I read it once, then handed it back. Reject it. They may come here themselves. They will. And when they reach the gate, I looked toward the road disappearing into the mountains. Give them exactly what they gave me. Evelyn waited. My voice stayed calm. Nothing. By the 5th day, Blackstone was no longer just a private estate. It had become the only place in the region that still worked. The roads were broken. Power grids were failing. Hospitals were running low on medicine. Supermarket shelves were empty. But every morning, Blackstone trucks still rolled out of the mountain. Food, water, fuel, medicine, generators. People had started calling us the Mountain City. I stood inside the command room while red markers spread across the regional map. A logistics officer pointed to the Western District. 2 villages are cut off. Open the quarry road. It's unstable. Send reinforced vehicles. A medical coordinator stepped forward. The local clinic lost refrigeration. Move the patients here. We could receive more than 200. Prepare for 400. No one argued. They moved. That was how Blackstone worked. Order first, then speed, then results. Outside, temporary housing had already been built along the eastern fields. The old guest wing had become a medical center. The stables had become a supply depot. Displaced mechanics repaired vehicles. Farmers worked the greenhouses. Nurses joined our medical teams. Families who arrived with nothing were given food, shelter, and work. I did not promise them miracles. I gave them structure. That was enough. Evelyn approached with another report. Our food processing network is expanding. How fast? 3 farms joined this morning. Transportation. 1 damaged company accepted our fuel and vehicle offer. Good. And a private clinic wants to join Blackstone Medical. I nodded. The storm was destroying weak systems. I was replacing them with stronger ones. Quietly. No speeches. No press conferences. No giant banners with my face on them. While the Vale family sat in darkness, Blackstone was buying damaged assets at fair prices, preserving jobs, rebuilding supply chains, and expanding across the region. A food plant received emergency repairs in exchange for partial ownership. A bankrupt transport firm received new vehicles. 3 farms joined our agricultural network. An abandoned hotel became temporary housing. Every disaster created a problem. Every problem created an opening. And every opening made Blackstone stronger. Then the inheritance system activated again. New facility unlocked. Silas and I descended beneath the main villa. A sealed steel door opened after recognizing my identity. Lights switched on one by one. The underground chamber seemed endless. Automated production lines, water purification equipment, medical manufacturing units, battery systems, seed storage, secure communication servers. Grandfather had not built a mansion. He had built a survival machine. Silas looked around. Arthur believed a real empire should survive even when the market doesn't. I ran my hand across one of the control panels. He prepared for all of this. He prepared for worse. Within hours, the underground facility was producing water filters, preserved meals, batteries, and medical supplies. Blackstone no longer depended on the outside world. At the Vale estate, the opposite was happening. They had eaten the last bread. The imported meat had spoiled days earlier. The freezers were useless. The servants were gone. The remaining cash was worthless if there was nowhere to buy food. Marcus finally caught several ornamental fish from the garden pond and cooked them over a small fire. Margaret called it disgusting. Then she ate more than anyone else. Beatrice hid food inside her coat. Caleb caught her. They fought over it. Plate shattered. Beatrice's lip split open. Sophia stood in the doorway and watched. 5 days earlier, these people had looked like royalty. Now they were fighting over scraps. That was when Sophia finally understood something. For years, she had thought my life looked easy. She thought I was boring because I never panicked. She thought Caleb was more ambitious because he talked louder. But everything had looked easy because I had carried the weight where no one could see it. Without me, the weight had crushed them. Then one of the last servants entered the hall. There are trucks on the northern road. Victor rushed to the window. Black vehicles moved across the ridge. The Blackstone emblem was painted on every door. Villagers stood beside the road receiving crates of food and water. Caleb grabbed his coat. Stop them. The servant did not move. Caleb turned. What are you waiting for? My family is already at the Blackstone shelter. Margaret stared at him. You work for us. The servant slowly removed his jacket. You haven't paid anyone in months. Victor stepped forward. We paid you. No. The man looked directly at him. Mr. Ethan did. Silence. Sophia's face changed. Caleb stepped closer. Where is this shelter? Blackstone Villa. Sophia whispered the question before anyone else could. Who owns it? The servant looked at her. Mr. Ethan. Victor's glass slipped from his hand. It shattered across the floor. Margaret shook her head. No. Caleb grabbed the servant by the collar. You're lying. The man pulled free. I saw him. He stood at the gates while families entered. Everyone called him Master Ethan. Sophia backed away. Blackstone Consortium, the hidden companies, the endless trucks, the mountain fortress, all of it belonged to the man she had abandoned. The servant opened the door. Cold wind rushed inside. Before leaving, he looked back at them. Mr. Ethan is feeding everyone. Then his expression hardened. Everyone except you. The door closed. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Eleanor finally whispered, "Will he let us in?" Nobody answered, because they already knew. At Blackstone, Evelyn approached me with a tablet. The Vale estate submitted another emergency request. For what? Food, fuel, medical assistance, evacuation. Reason: they're claiming family priority. I almost smiled. Reject it. Evelyn nodded. They may come here personally. They will. Outside, another convoy returned through the gates. Children were laughing beneath the covered courtyard. Workers unloaded bread, medicine, and clean water. The entire mountain was alive. Far below us, the family that once told me to sleep under a bridge had nothing left. No power, no company, no food. Soon, they would lose the house too. Silas joined us. Vale Holdings has officially entered default. I turned. How bad? Payroll failed. Suppliers seized inventory. 3 subsidiaries collapsed. And Meridian. Silas placed a document in front of me. The collateral provisions have been activated. I read the first page, then the second. The Vale estate now legally belonged to Blackstone. I looked toward the distant valley. The gates they had slammed in my face weren't theirs anymore. Evelyn asked quietly, "What happens when they find out?" I closed the file. They'll do what desperate people always do. What? I looked toward the mountain road. They'll come looking for the man they threw away. By the 7th day of the storm, the Vale family had lost everything they once believed made them powerful. The company, the money, the reputation, and soon, the house. The same house where they had stood behind the gates and laughed at me. The same house where Victor told me to disappear. Now, that house belonged to Blackstone. But they still did not know. Not yet. Inside Vale Holdings headquarters, chaos had replaced confidence. The emergency boardroom that once hosted celebrations was now filled with arguments. Victor slammed a report onto the table. Why are the banks refusing to extend more credit? No one answered. The finance director he had appointed looked nervous. Because our debt ratio is too high. Victor stared at him. Who approved those numbers? The man lowered his head. You did. Silence. Caleb looked around. So fix it. We can't. What do you mean? We can't. The assets we plan to sell are already pledged. Margaret's face changed. What assets? The finance director hesitated. The hotels, the warehouses, and the estate. Everyone stopped. The estate. Their home. Victor slowly turned. You're saying the house is collateral. No one spoke, because everyone knew. Victor had signed the documents himself. He had believed he was unlocking more money. He had believed he was expanding the Vale empire. He never realized he was placing a rope around his own neck. Caleb stood up. This is Ethan's fault. Sophia looked at him. How? He arranged everything before leaving. No. Everyone turned toward her. For the first time, Sophia defended me, not because she cared, because she was afraid. He was removed 3 days ago. He couldn't have done this. Caleb's expression darkened. You're defending him. Sophia looked away. She remembered. She remembered every time I warned the board. Every time I told Victor to slow down. Every time I rejected risky projects. At the time, they called me paranoid. Now they called those same warnings reality. Meanwhile, at Blackstone, I watched the reports arrive. Vale Holdings is collapsing faster than expected. Silas placed the documents on my desk. Victor has started blaming internal sabotage. I almost smiled. Of course, Margaret believes someone betrayed the family. Also predictable. Caleb believes you planned revenge. I looked up. Did I? Silas paused, then smiled slightly. No, exactly. I had not destroyed them. I had simply stopped holding them up. There was a difference. For years, I had been the invisible foundation beneath Vale Holdings. They never thanked the foundation. They only noticed when the building started falling. Evelyn entered with another report. The last senior managers have left. Where did they go? She handed me a list. Blackstone. I looked through the names. Accountants, engineers, operations directors, security specialists, people who had spent years being ignored by my relatives. Now they finally had somewhere they belonged. Good. Evelyn nodded. There is one more issue. What? The public is starting to ask questions. About Vale. Yes. The company's reputation is falling. I looked at the city below. Let it. A company built on lies could not survive the truth. That afternoon, Victor made his final mistake. He called a press conference. He stood in front of cameras wearing an expensive suit and gave the speech he thought would save him. Vale Holdings remains strong. We are experiencing temporary difficulties. Our leadership team is fully prepared. The reporters asked one question after another. Why did several executives resign? Why are suppliers demanding payment? Why did the company's stock collapse? Victor smiled. A fake smile. The same one he used when he threw me out. We are handling everything. But everyone watching could see it. The confidence was gone. The fear was underneath. Then a reporter asked, "Where is Ethan Vale?" The room became quiet. Victor froze for half a second. He is no longer involved. Was he responsible for the company's financial problems? Victor hesitated. That hesitation was enough, because everyone knew the truth. The man they blamed was gone, and the company immediately started falling apart. That evening, another storm warning arrived. The second wave was worse. Flood levels rose. Roads disappeared. Supplies became harder to transport. At Blackstone, we prepared. At Vale, they panicked. Their imported food was almost gone. Their generators were failing. Their remaining employees had abandoned them. The once luxurious dining hall became a battlefield. Margaret hid food in her room. Beatrice accused her of stealing. Marcus searched the kitchen every night. Caleb started counting every bottle of water. Sophia sat silently at the table. She looked around at the people she had chosen, the people she believed were winners. Now they looked like strangers trapped together. Victor entered. "We're leaving." Everyone looked at him. "Where?" He said nothing, because there was only one place left. The mountain. Blackstone Villa. Margaret immediately rejected the idea. "You expect us to ask Ethan?" Victor's face tightened. "I expect us to survive." No one argued, because hunger had finally defeated pride. Before sunrise, they left the estate. The people who once arrived at parties in luxury cars now walked through mud. Victor led the way. His expensive coat was soaked. Margaret followed behind him, struggling in shoes designed for marble floors, not flooded roads. Caleb carried a leather bag. Inside were watches, jewelry, and contracts, things that had once represented power. Now they were just weight. Sophia walked silently. No makeup, no designer smile, no audience, only exhaustion. Halfway up the mountain, Margaret collapsed. My feet. Nobody helped. The same people who spent years demanding Ethan solve every problem now looked at each other, waiting for someone else to sacrifice. Eventually, Caleb stepped forward, not to help, to take the jewelry pouch from her bag. Margaret saw him. "You're stealing from me." Caleb stared. "You don't need it anymore." For a moment, everyone understood. The family had not become cruel because of the storm. The storm had simply removed the mask. They had always been this way. They just had enough money to hide it. Hours later, they finally reached the final road leading to Blackstone. And they stopped, because in front of them stood a wall taller than any structure at the Vale estate. Steel gates, security towers, Blackstone guards. The place was alive. Warm lights filled the mountain. Vehicles moved through the entrance. Families inside were eating hot meals. Children were playing. The people Ethan rescued. The people his family ignored. Victor stared. How? No one answered. Then the gate speaker activated. A calm voice came through. "Identify yourselves." Victor stepped forward. "This is Victor Vale." A pause. "I am Ethan's uncle." Silence. Margaret added quickly, "We are his family." The guards did not react. Victor's voice became sharper. "Open the gate." Nothing. Then the speaker answered. "Request denied." Everyone froze. Caleb stepped forward. "You don't understand who we are." The guard's voice remained calm. "We know exactly who you are." The family looked at each other. Then a final message came. Master Ethan is aware of your arrival. Sophia's face turned pale. He knows. The speaker answered. Yes. A long silence followed. Then, he has been waiting, far above the gate. Inside the Blackstone command room, I watched their exhausted faces on the screen. The same faces that laughed when I stood in the rain. The same people who told me I had nothing. Now they were standing outside my gates, waiting for my mercy. Silas stood beside me. Shall we open the gate? I looked at the screen. Not yet. Let them wait. Because for the first time in their lives, they needed something from me, and they finally understood what that felt like. For 3 hours, the Vale family stood outside the Blackstone gates. The rain had stopped, but the cold remained, and for the first time in their lives, they experienced something they had never faced before: being ignored. Victor kept looking toward the security cameras. He was used to people responding when he spoke. Employees, partners, relatives. Everyone always listened. But here, his name meant nothing. He stepped toward the speaker. Ethan. His voice was no longer arrogant. Open the gate. No response. He waited, then tried again. We need to talk. Still nothing. Margaret wrapped her arms around herself. This is ridiculous. She looked toward the guards. He is our family. One of the guards remained expressionless. Please step back from the gate. Margaret stared at him. Do you know who I am? The guard looked at her. Yes. That answer confused her. She expected fear, respect, at least hesitation. Instead, she got nothing. You know who I am? She repeated. Yes. Then open the gate. No. The single word destroyed the last piece of confidence she had left. Behind the walls of Blackstone Villa, people continued moving. Workers carried supplies. Doctors treated patients. Children played inside the warm buildings. The world inside the gate continued. The world outside waited. And the difference was painful. Sophia stood quietly. She had not spoken for almost an hour. Her eyes stayed fixed on the lights inside the estate. She remembered another night. The night Ethan left. She remembered him standing in the rain, alone, holding that same suitcase. She remembered laughing. Not loudly, not cruelly, but she had laughed, because she believed he had lost. Now she understood something. Ethan had not lost anything. They had simply failed to see what he had become. Caleb walked toward her. You're quiet. Sophia did not look at him. What do you want me to say? That will get inside. She finally looked at him. And if we don't? Caleb opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because neither of them had an answer. The man they abandoned was the only person who could save them, and they knew exactly how impossible that felt. Inside the command room, I watched them through the security screen. Silas stood beside me. They have been waiting for nearly 4 hours. I looked at the monitor. They waited 4 years before thanking me. Silas said nothing, because he knew. I was not talking about money. I was talking about every time I stayed late fixing their mistakes. Every time I covered for them. Every time I protected the family name while they used mine as a shield. The betrayal was not one moment. It was thousands of small choices. Evelyn entered. The villagers are asking about them. I looked away from the screen. They know who they are. She paused. Many of them worked for Vale Holdings. I understood. The people outside the gate were not strangers. They were the same people my family had ignored. The accountant Victor fired. The engineers Caleb insulted. The workers Margaret treated like they were invisible. They were all watching, waiting to see what Ethan Vale would do. I stood. Opened the gate. Silas looked surprised. Now, yes. The massive steel doors began moving. Slowly, the sound echoed through the mountain. The Vale family immediately straightened. Hope returned to their faces. They thought they had won. They thought the gate opening meant forgiveness. They were wrong. Warm air flowed outside. The smell of fresh bread reached them. Margaret's eyes widened. Caleb swallowed. They had not smelled real food in days. The guards stepped aside. Enter. The family walked through. Slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. Because beyond the gate was not just a mansion. It was proof. Proof of everything they failed to understand. The villagers stood nearby. Former employees stood beside them. The accountant Victor humiliated. The logistics manager Marcus replaced. The nurses Margaret insulted. The engineers Caleb mocked. All of them were healthy, clean, protected, while the Vale family walked through the courtyard covered in mud. No one laughed. No one needed to. Silence was worse. Victor looked around. His expression changed. This was not a shelter. This was an empire. A real one. At the end of the stone path stood a large terrace. And there I was, sitting in a black chair, wearing a dark suit, a glass of wine on the table beside me. Not angry, not excited, just calm. Victor stopped. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe apologize, maybe explain. But pride stopped him. The same pride that destroyed him. Margaret stepped forward. A guard blocked her. For the first time in her life, she hesitated before demanding something. Then she looked at me and slowly lowered herself. To her knees, everyone froze. Margaret Vale had never apologized to anyone. Not employees, not relatives, not even when she was wrong. But now she was kneeling. Ethan, her voice trembled. Please. Victor looked away. Seeing his wife kneel was humiliating. But humiliation was nothing compared to hunger. Slowly, he lowered himself too. One by one, the others followed. Marcus, Beatrice, Eleanor. The people who once stood above everyone else were now kneeling on the stone floor of the man they abandoned. Only Caleb remained standing. He looked around, at the guards, at the employees, to Sophia, then at me. His face changed, because he finally understood. This was not Ethan trying to prove he was better. This was Ethan showing them the truth. Caleb had spent his whole life believing he deserved everything. But the person he called worthless had built everything. His legs slowly gave out. His knees touched the ground. Finally, Sophia stepped forward. She was the last one. Our eyes met. For a moment, I saw the woman who once promised she would never leave me. Then I saw the woman who stood beside Caleb while I walked into the rain. She lowered herself. The entire Vale family was kneeling. The same people who had laughed when I had nothing. Now they had nothing. And I had everything. Victor lowered his head. Ethan. I lifted the glass from the table. He stopped. The old version of me might have interrupted. The old version of me might have accepted their apology immediately. But that man had died outside those gates. I took a slow sip, then placed the glass down. For what? No one answered. Margaret swallowed. For everything. That is not an answer. Her face tightened. For removing you from the company. Silence. For forcing you out of the estate. Another pause. For believing the accusations. I looked at them, then said quietly, you didn't believe them. Everyone froze. You created them. Victor's head lifted. For the first time, fear appeared in his eyes. Because he knew. The truth was finally coming out. I leaned back. Tell me what happened. No one moved. Who created the documents? Silence. Who paid the employees? Victor looked away. Who planned everything? The storm outside had ended. But inside that courtyard, another storm had just begun. Finally, Victor spoke. His voice was barely audible. I did. Margaret looked at him. Victor continued. I forged the financial reports. I bribed the employees. I convinced the board. Caleb stared at him. You told me Ethan was guilty. Victor closed his eyes. I needed you to believe it. Sophia looked at the ground. The truth she had refused to see was finally standing in front of her. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. A betrayal. I looked at every person kneeling before me. They had come here expecting rescue. But before they received anything, they would face what they had done. Because forgiveness without truth meant nothing. And they had spent years believing lies were more valuable than loyalty. I stood. My voice remained calm. Now, tell me everything. The truth came out slowly. But once it started, no one could stop it. Victor sat on his knees in the center of the Blackstone courtyard. The same man who had stood in front of the Vale estate days earlier, holding a glass of whiskey and ordering me to disappear. Now he could barely look at me. I wanted the company. His voice was low. That was all. Nobody spoke. Victor continued. When Arthur died, I knew the board would follow you. He looked down. You were young, but everyone trusted you. His hands trembled. I spent my entire life standing behind your grandfather's shadow. So I decided I would take what I believed should have been mine. Margaret closed her eyes. She knew. Everyone knew. The betrayal had not started with me. It had started long before they pushed me out. Victor continued. I created the financial reports. I arranged the witnesses. I convinced the board that Ethan was dangerous. He swallowed. Then Caleb helped remove him. Caleb immediately looked up. Uncle, you said everything would work. Victor ignored him. You all wanted something. He looked around. Margaret wanted control of the estate. Caleb wanted Ethan's position. Marcus wanted money for his failing businesses. Beatrice wanted her debts erased. Everyone took something. The courtyard became silent. Because it was true. Every person there had benefited from my downfall. Nobody had been forced. Nobody had been tricked. They had chosen. Sophia's voice was barely audible. You knew he was innocent. Victor did not answer. That was the answer. Her face changed. For the first time, she understood the full weight of what she had done. She had not left me because she believed a lie. She left me because she wanted to stand beside the winner. She just chose the wrong one. I looked at her. Did you ever believe I stole from the company? Sophia opened her mouth. Nothing came out. A few seconds later, tears appeared in her eyes. No, the word was almost a whisper. I knew you wouldn't. Then why? She looked down. Because I thought you were finished. There it was. The simplest truth. Not anger. Not revenge. Fear. She abandoned me because she thought I had become useless. I nodded slowly. At least she was finally honest. Silas stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. Master Ethan. I opened it. Inside were the final reports. Evidence. Contracts. Recorded communications. Everything. The proof that the betrayal was planned. The proof that they had intentionally destroyed my reputation. The proof that they had stolen from the company. I closed the folder. The old Ethan would have been furious. The old Ethan would have wanted them to suffer immediately. But that Ethan had disappeared the night those gates closed. The person standing here now was different. I looked at Victor. You know what the worst part was? Nobody moved. I could have accepted losing the company. Victor looked up. I could have accepted losing the money. I paused. But I spent years believing I had a family. The words hurt more than any accusation. Because they were true. I thought if I protected you long enough, you would eventually protect me. No one asked you to. Margaret suddenly spoke. Her voice cracked. You're right. Everyone looked at her. For once, she was not pretending. We took everything you gave us. And we gave you nothing. She lowered her head. I'm sorry. The courtyard remained silent. Because everyone knew. It was too late. I walked toward the edge of the terrace. Below me was the mountain road. The same road where I had walked away carrying one suitcase. The same road where I believed I had lost everything. But now I understood. That night was not the end. It was the beginning. Victor spoke behind me. Ethan. I stopped. Please. The words sounded strange coming from him. I know we don't deserve it. That's correct. His face fell. But we are still family. I turned around. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then I spoke. No. The answer was quiet, but it carried through the entire courtyard. You are related to me. That is not the same thing. Margaret started crying. Ethan. I looked at them. Family protects you when you have nothing. They don't destroy you because they want more. The wind moved through the courtyard. My voice remained calm. You taught me something. Blood without loyalty is only a stain. Nobody responded. Because there was nothing to say. They had used the word family as a weapon. Now they finally understood what it meant. I turned toward the guards. Open the outer gate. Everyone looked confused. Hope appeared on their faces. They thought I had changed my mind. They thought I was going to forgive them. The gates opened, but not the way they expected. The guards stepped forward. Victor looked at me. Ethan. I answered without emotion. You wanted the Veil name. You wanted the power. You wanted everything that came with this family. I looked at the evidence folder. Now you can face everything that came with it. The legal teams had already prepared. Fraud, bribery, financial conspiracy, illegal transfers, corporate theft. Every crime had evidence. Every signature had consequences. The family members who once controlled the company would now answer for what they had done. Victor was the first to leave, not as chairman, not as a powerful businessman, as a criminal suspect. Caleb followed. The man who once wore my coat now walked away with nothing. Margaret cried as she was escorted out. The woman who demanded luxury from everyone else finally lost every luxury she owned. Sophia stopped at the gate. For a moment, she looked back. I knew what she wanted to say. Maybe an apology, maybe a goodbye, but there was nothing left between us. I simply turned away. The gates closed, this time forever. Months passed. The Vale name disappeared from business records. Victor faced prosecution for fraud, bribery, and falsifying documents. Caleb was charged with theft, assault, and financial conspiracy. Margaret lost every asset she had protected more than the people around her. The family that once believed money made them untouchable learned the truth. Money only delays consequences. It never removes them. Meanwhile, Blackstone continued growing. But I never returned to the Vale estate. I did not need to. That place represented the person I used to be. The man who begged for love from people who only valued what he could provide. Instead, I transformed it. The old dining hall became a community center. The unused luxury rooms became medical facilities. The private garage became a rescue vehicle station. The mansion built for greed became a place that helped people. Years later, I stood on the balcony of Blackstone Villa, the same place where I had first looked down at my new empire. Silas placed the final report beside me. The last legal case connected to the Vale family has ended. I opened it. Everything was complete. Every stolen asset recovered. Every debt settled. Every betrayal answered. I looked toward the distant road. For a moment, I remembered that rainy night, the suitcase, the laughter, the closing gates. But strangely, I felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, no desire for revenge. That was the final victory. Not watching them fall, not seeing them suffer, not hearing them beg. The final victory was realizing they no longer controlled any part of my life. Silas stood beside me. Do you ever think about what happened? I looked across the mountains. Yes. Do you regret it? I smiled slightly. No, because if they had never betrayed me, I would have spent my entire life protecting people who never deserved it. The world called it revenge. Maybe it was, but I saw it differently. Karma does not always arrive by itself. Sometimes, it simply opens a door, and the foolish walk through it willingly. Behind me, the lights of Blackstone Villa turned on one by one. A new empire, built not on greed, but on loyalty, and this time, I chose who belonged inside.